Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
Auto insurance can all seem the same until it comes time to use it. So don't get stuck paying more for less coverage. Switch to USAA Auto Insurance and you could start saving money in no time. Get a quote today. Restrictions apply.
USAA. Hilton brings you new ways to stay. With experiences that let you capture the glory days. Introducing the Graduate Hotels. Each inspired by local college towns, these stays are always original and never boring. Get in touch with traditions all across the country and enjoy a stay that's a class above the rest. Book at Graduate Hotels with Hilton Honors Points at Hilton.com. It's a win-win. Hilton, for the stay.
From the Fifth Quarter Studios in Madison, Wisconsin, you are listening to High School Hoops with our hosts, Steve Collins and Jake Steger. All right, welcome. High School Hoops, episode 74. I think this is our third or fourth take, so we're going to get it going on this one. We've had some issues. We're just going to go with it. That's what we do. If you hear some little noises or ruffling of papers or whatever, deal with it. This is just two guys talking hoops. So if you want to send me complaints, don't, because I won't open it. Anyway, so before we get going, I'm going to give a big shout out to our two sponsors. First of all, Dr. Dish, the #1 shooting machine on the market. Go over and check them out. I'm going to do my auctioneer speed here, $350 off, and they'll give you on a new Dr. Dish or one of the home ones or one of those. Also, make sure you go over and check out teachhoops.com for coaches who want to get better. It is one-stop shopping for basketball coaches. So go over and check them out. I do not think you'll be disappointed. And I also started a Patreon one where I'm kind of giving, ever since the beginning of January, I've been kind of talking about that. So if you want to check that out, the link will be down below. All right, Coach, what is this week's episode on?
So I'm trying to, for the topics of February and as we go into March, just really focusing on getting ready for playoffs in general for high school basketball coaches. But my question today relates to the approaches to game situations in practice. So how do you as a high school coach approach game situations? I know that in particular you do it all through the year, but what does that look like for you? Is it a little bit different when we get close to postseason? Recommendations, just kind of talking and that kind of thing in regards to game situations.
It is, and I don't do as much as I'd like because I just don't have the time to do that as far as game situations. But yeah, I try to build it in, like, you know what our schedule looks like for the next couple of weeks. We play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Tuesday, Friday. So I don't have a lot of time to do game situations at this point in the season because we're playing so many games in such a short period of time. But what I do is I try to make it a competitive thing. I try to break up the teams, not necessarily the starting five or the guys that will be on the court. That way they have to talk and communicate. But it's like getting shots up in practice. It is one of those things you have to consciously think about on a regular basis. And if you do this long enough, you're going to be in enough close games that you have to be able to, what are we going to do? How are we going to foul? If you watched, the Duke North Carolina game, throwing it off the front of that rim, or the North Carolina Duke game where they threw it off the front of the rim. I mean, if you want to do those kind of things, you got to practice. How do you practice fouling a specific person? What do you do in that? So it's some of those things that you don't necessarily think about that you really have to spend some time on. Go ahead.
When I look at game situations, when I have coached high school, I like to do them periodically throughout my practice plan. So like maybe after 4 or 5 drills, we go to a game situation.
Right.
4 or 5 drills, game situation. I literally had water bottles and I had chairs set off to the side, and I would really pull that team aside and my assistant would pull that aside. It was like almost like a game, and the kids just love it, and it's really good for practice. And so that's how I always did it. And I had the different situations already embedded, and I practiced them out throughout I had them all situated. So my colors at that point, I had a black team and a white team. I would say our black team's on this situation and white team is doing this, and this is the lead, this is that, boom, boom, boom. I give it all to them, and I would allow the coaches to make adjustments and do those type of things.
Right.
I think one thing that you need to really look at is like what kind of team you have and what you do with situations. So like we just had a discussion about teams, are you a first half team? Are you a second half team?
Right.
Are there things you can do in practice that can build on getting better during the first half of your game of a normal game? So, keep providing a situation. We're going to simulate the first 6 minutes of a game. And we're going to see what that looks like. I think often we look at game situations at the end of a game, but I think that game situations can be something that you're approaching certain weaknesses or areas that you need to grow on with your team, not just looking at the end of a game situation. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it's like, that's a great idea. I'm going to steal that. I'm doing that
Okay.
tomorrow. That's a great idea. Because all the games we've lost, we've started out slow. So it might be a good idea to really simulate the beginning of a game for us. That's a great idea. I think breaking it up too, it's the math teacher to me. If anybody knows anything about teaching high school math, they tend to put probability at the end of the year. And I hate that because it's like putting something at the end of practice. You've lost them at that point. So I try to sprinkle it too. They're the least focused at the end of practice than they are at the beginning. Now, philosophically, should they be the same? Yes. But you're dealing with 15 to 18-year-old brains. They're not. They're cashing out. They're thinking about the homework, what's for dinner, yada, yada, yada. So I think things you got to really think about. Yeah.
The other thing thinking about, and you not stealing my idea, but just taking my idea, is that maybe you think about doing that situation right in the start of practice because that's what their bodies are like in the beginning of a game. So like it makes more sense to focus on end of game situations when the end of practice is happening because that's what their body types are like. I know that's a whole psychological and body thing, but like as more as you can make it game like the better.
Right.
So maybe it would be more beneficial to, all right, so if we're going to do a couple drills early in practice and let's decide to recreate the start of a game early in practice, like doing a warm up and going right into a game situation of the first 5-6 minutes of a game. Cause that's what it's really like in a game, cause we're still our hands, we've gotten shots off and stuff, but we're really not fully in the swing of a game till, 12, 15 minutes into a game depending on your group. Some groups can get into it right away and they don't skip a beat the first 2 or 3 minutes. And some teams take 8 or 9, 10 minutes, heck, the whole entire half to figure it out before they actually start looking like a team. So that's just another suggestion. I've read articles about like, it's important to constantly not always keep the same practice plan when I'm talking about practice plan, but like what you do in practice, but changing it because then kids don't get constantly comfortable, like kind of like a wavelength. So like if practice is always hard in the beginning, well, if you fizzle out at the end of practice, that's because you make practice too easy. So it's a kind of having a balance of what you do within your practice too will help your kids get ready for game situations.
Right. And the thing is, I had one of my guys say yesterday in a timeout, it was the best thing I've ever heard. It's like, we were up big and we're talking about what we're doing specific. I don't know if it was an offensive set or since it's, and I go, we just got to execute this and blah, blah, blah. And it basically out of his mouth, he goes, this is easier than practice. Like perfect. Yes,
that's exactly it.
That's exactly the comment you want from one of your players. It's like, this is easy. I go, yeah. If we do it in practice, this should be easy. Executing and running our stuff, and the slips and the slices and all that kind of stuff getting to the basket. All right.
I think that's the other thing is like sometimes kids get too comfortable with routine, and routine is good. But like with practice, I think change is always good too. Like this whole month of February, I think of my students, like we're getting ready for the science fair. So we've been doing so much more science. I will tell you, it's been the best month of teaching right now because we're doing different things. And so like having that normal routine, but also sprinkling a little bit of different things, it is so good even for high school girls and high school boys to constantly change some things that you do and how you structure things.
Right. I think that's a positive. All right. Anything else on that, Coach?
No. And then, I am actually prepared because in January I had basically no full-time out. So I'm like, I am going to make sure that I don't look like a fool on our podcast anymore. Okay. So in respect of Kobe Bryant, I would want to say, what is one thing you've learned or valued from Kobe Bryant as a coach or just from a perspective of a person?
I would say it's his work ethic. I don't think people realize And I was listening to an interview, and he basically said he thought Shaquille O'Neal could have been the best player ever to play the game, but he didn't work as hard as he could have. And I think that's what people don't realize is, he came in as an 18-year-old and, struggled a little bit and decided, what was this going to take to be successful, to be a worker, to be those kind of things. And part of the tragedy behind this is the helicopter was one way that he could work out. He could do the things that he needed to do to become an exceptional basketball player when he was still with the Lakers.
Right.
Still be a family man. So I think that's the irony in this thing is that like all that hard work kind of, with this accident. But that's the one thing I think that Mamba mentality I think is.
Within the Mamba mentality, I think of Kobe Bryant as somebody that's attention to detail. That what you talked about, I think his attention to detail is extraordinary just in regards to he didn't overcomplicate the game. He actually simplified it, and then he just was able to the attention to detail, the simplifications that he made, he just became explosive. If you ever watch Kobe play, he didn't do a million different moves. He was just able to read the game so well. He was able to make it look like he's going to go one way and go the other. He just was so good at what he did, and he just paid so attention to detail. And, I think we've had conversations a lot. This is our 74 Coach Unplugged High School Hoops episode. Is that we overcomplicate the game so much. And I don't think Kobe really ever overcomplicated the game. I just think he thought about, all right, what am I really good at? What do I got to do? And he was just constantly attention to detail, getting lots of shots up, how to get myself from one way to the other. He didn't do 5 or 6 different between the legs. He was so good at making one guy go one way and be able to make that move and then be able to score off of that. It was just his attention to detail. I often believe that he would have been a very good coach or some type of facet because of his attention to detail.
Yeah.
So for somebody from a coach standpoint, I just really appreciated his attention to detail and not overcomplicating the game, which a lot of people do now these days.
And I think there's some videos about him out there that he did. I don't remember where they are, ESPN Plus or something, whatever. But of him literally breaking down like a pivot, and it's it's stuff that you just are you. Oh my God.
Yeah. Al Stein just wrote an article and I read it and just said and Kobe invited him to come watch him work out. And he said, it wasn't like it was all these different crazy workouts. It was the basic stuff.
He wasn't bouncing a ball, catching it, jumping over a chair, all the stuff that, he was doing the basic, and also he was a very gifted, don't get it wrong. He's Kobe. He was Kobe because he worked hard and he was very talented. You can do the hard work gives you a chance is what I'm telling you. Yeah.
And, and again, state championship basketball teams have a little bit of talent, like I said.
You better be good. But you also need a little luck and you need to execute stuff. My best teams haven't necessarily always won it. All right. Till next week, Coach.
All right. Sounds good.
Good.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.